4:14 a.m. Dawson County, eastern Montana. 36 degrees Fahrenheit. A crescent moon low in the western sky gave almost no light at all. Wind off the Yellowstone River pushed a thin skein of topsoil across an access track that had not been maintained in years. 6 operators from the FBI hostage rescue team moved in 2 columns toward a rusted corrugated iron sheet lying flat against the earth behind a derelict cattle weighing station on the southern edge of Glendive. The structure around them was a ruin, wood frame walls decaying in the weather, a collapsed roof, a scale housing stripped of its machinery in the late 1990s when the cattle operation that built it folded under drought and debt. The structure had been empty on county records for 27 years. What satellite imagery and a ground-penetrating radar survey confirmed 48 hours earlier was that the concrete foundation below ground level was not original to this building. It had been poured within the past 3 years, over a chamber that did not appear on any county survey, any building permit record, or any land use filing at the Dawson County Assessor's Office. A Montana State Police K-9 team held the outer perimeter 200 meters back, covering the cattle track that served as the only vehicle approach. 6 additional FBI agents controlled the access road junction 150 meters east. 3 U.S. Marshals maintained a static position at the county highway cutoff. A surveillance drone fed live thermal imaging from a base in Glendive, 9 kilometers out to the command vehicle parked behind the ruin's remaining wall. The display showed 2 heat signatures, 6 feet below the surface, consistent with resting humans. They had been down there for 41 days. The shape charge detonated at 4:14 and 16 seconds. The lead operators were on fixed-line ropes and descending 9 seconds after that. What they found, 6 feet underground in a reinforced concrete chamber, ventilated through buried PVC conduit disguised as drainage infrastructure, was 2 steel cage enclosures positioned side by side along the chamber's long axis. Harold Petrov occupied the left enclosure. Mariana Petrov occupied the right. Both were conscious. Harold was 73, a retired timber accountant from Bonners Ferry, Idaho. Mariana was 71, a former part-time librarian, his wife of 51 years. Harold looked toward the tactical lights coming down from the hatch and asked if the agents were federal. He was told yes. FBI. He said Patricia called the bank. Then he said nothing else for a moment. Mariana asked if it was morning. The operation that put Harold and Mariana Petrov into a sealed concrete bunker beneath a derelict weighing station in eastern Montana had been running for 22 months. It had extracted $740,000 from their retirement before the people running it decided that physical custody was safer than the alternative. The case that found them is called Operation Bear Hollow. It would eventually account for 7 individuals in federal custody, 2 fugitives at large as of late June 2026, 23 names on a recovered asset list, and a formal federal review of 41 unresolved missing persons cases across 6 states. The element that broke the case was not a satellite intercept, not a confidential informant, not a financial algorithm. It was a pharmacist in Glendive, Montana, who noticed that a recurring prescription pickup route did not make geographical sense and made a phone call to the county sheriff's non-emergency line. Everything else followed from that. Harold and Mariana Petrov had lived on a 30-acre homestead outside Bonners Ferry in Idaho's Boundary County for nearly 19 years. Harold had helped build the 2-story timber frame house in the early 2000s. He was that kind of man, careful and methodical, the kind of person who maintained written records of home repairs, filed receipts by month, and measured twice before cutting. Mariana kept a kitchen garden along the south-facing wall of the house, held a library card she had owned since 1994, and baked bread on Thursdays. They had 2 grown daughters, Ellen, 44, and Patricia, 42, both living in Boise, roughly 6 hours south by car. The daughters called every Sunday at noon. It had been routine for more than a decade, almost ceremonial in its consistency. Harold answered first, handed the phone to Mariana partway through. The calls ran between 20 and 35 minutes. Neither daughter could recall a Sunday in several years when the call had not connected within 2 or 3 rings. On April 19, 2026, neither call went through. Ellen tried at noon. Voicemail. She left a message. Tried again at 2 in the afternoon. Tried again at 4. Patricia called from her own phone at the same intervals. Same result. By 8 that evening, they had reached Harold's cell phone, Mariana's cell phone, 2 neighbor numbers they kept for emergencies, and Harold's brother in Spokane, who had not heard from him. A friend in Bonners Ferry had seen Harold at the hardware store in early April. Not since. The sisters drove north together the next morning. 6 hours. They arrived before noon on April 20th. What they found, 2 coffee cups on the porch table, both containing dried residue, set down mid-morning at some point and left there. Harold's primary pickup truck in the garage, keys in the ignition. The kitchen phone disconnected, not the cord pulled from the socket by accident, but the line itself removed from the wall jack with the cover neatly replaced over it. The front door unlocked. The wood shop unlatched. Tools on the workbench mid-project. A cabinet door half-hinged. Every appliance off except the refrigerator. No note, no luggage visibly missing. No sign of force, no broken fixtures, no blood, no disturbance. Just 2 empty cups and an absence that had no obvious explanation. Harold's second vehicle, a 1998 Dodge pickup, dark green, Idaho plates, was also gone from the property. The Bonner County Sheriff's Office took the report that afternoon. Deputies conducted a walkthrough and documented the same observations the daughters had made. The initial assessment was inconclusive. No clear evidence of a crime, possible voluntary departure under unspecified circumstances, possible medical situation requiring sudden travel. A BOLO was issued for the 1998 Dodge. 2 neighbors were interviewed. Neither had observed anything unusual on the 19th. Within 48 hours, the daughters had filed a missing persons report with the Idaho State Police and contacted the FBI field office in Salt Lake City. The FBI's initial case review returned a missing persons designation, concerning given the circumstances but without sufficient indicators of a federal crime for immediate case acceptance. That designation would change 10 days later, and the change would come from Patricia. Patricia Petrov worked in commercial property management in Boise. She was the daughter Harold had occasionally consulted when he needed financial documents reviewed. She had a working knowledge of her parents' financial picture, enough to know roughly what existed and roughly where it was. In the days after returning from Bonners Ferry, she began reviewing what she could access. She found a credit union account in Boise, an institution neither she nor Ellen had known existed, with a current balance of $412. The account had been open for 14 months. Its transaction history showed more than $300,000 routed outbound to a string of account numbers she did not recognize. She called the credit union. A compliance officer reviewed the account history and noted that the outgoing transfer pattern was non-standard for consumer activity. Patricia was asked to come into the branch with documentation. She did. 3 weeks earlier, Patricia had also gone to a different bank, the institution managing one of Harold's longer-held accounts, and asked questions about a statement reference she didn't understand. She had pushed back. She had started pulling on a thread. 4 days after her compliance meeting at the credit union on April 19, 2026, her parents disappeared. The timing was not coincidental. The ring had monitoring capability embedded in the communications infrastructure associated with the Petrovs accounts. Federal investigators determined that a silent alert, essentially a tripwire embedded in the account's back-end notification settings, transmitted a signal to the ring's operators when the compliance flag was internally triggered. The decision to move to physical custody was made within hours. The preparation was not improvised. A black Dodge Durango registered to one of the ring's shell entities appeared on a Bonners Ferry traffic camera at 7:43 a.m. on April 19. Harold's second truck was gone from the property before 11 that morning. The kitchen phone was disconnected cleanly, and the cover replaced neatly over the wall jack. The coffee cups were left on the porch because no one in the operation cared to bring them inside. The front organization through which the ring had first contacted Harold Petrov was called Veterans Horizon Financial Partners, registered as a nonprofit in Montana with a listed address in Billings that corresponded to a mailbox drop service in a strip mall on Shiloh Road. The website had been professionally designed and lived since early 2023. 5 employees were named, each with a photograph and a title. None were real. The photographs came from stock image libraries. The names corresponded to no licensed individuals in any state. The listed phone number routed to a VoIP relay connecting to a leased residential property in Miles City, where a small call center operation handled victim contact. Veterans Horizon presented itself as a veterans reverse mortgage advisory nonprofit. Harold Petrov was a veteran, U.S. Army, early 1970s, 2 years of domestic service followed by honorable discharge. His name had appeared over the years on several veteran-associated subscription and donation lists, which placed it into data broker compilations that are, in the United States, entirely legal to purchase and use for outreach. That legally purchased dataset is how the ring identified him. The initial contact arrived in August 2024, a printed mailer to the Bonners Ferry address, professionally produced with typography that evoked institutional credibility without technically claiming any government affiliation. The offer, a complimentary financial review for qualified veterans and their spouses. Phone consultation, no commitment required. Harold called. The first call lasted approximately 40 minutes and was structured entirely as an intake interview. Questions about his service years, his property, his retirement income, his existing account arrangements. No ask, no pitch. Just information gathering, framed as preliminary assessment. He called back the following week. The ring assigned him to a senior coordinator. What followed was a 22-month operation built in 2 phases. Phase 1, information extraction, covered the first 6 months. A series of calls, mailed documents, and 1 face-to-face meeting in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, at which Harold and Mariana met with a person presenting as a licensed financial advisor named Mitchell Reeves. This individual has not been identified. The name Mitchell Reeves corresponds to no licensed financial advisor in any state. A restaurant exterior camera captured the individual arriving for the meeting, wearing a hat angled away from every lens. Over Phase 1, the ring built a complete financial profile. The homestead valuation, the timber pension schedule, the Social Security deposit dates, the full account structure, the accumulated savings position, the beneficiary arrangements. That profile was the blueprint for Phase 2. Phase 2, financial extraction, ran from February 2025 through April 2026. 13 months. The mechanism was a layered account restructuring program Harold was told would optimize his reverse mortgage position and reduce his estate planning liability. The paperwork was professionally produced. The language was technical but consistent and never alarming. Every instruction made sense in the context of the larger plan that Reeves and his colleagues had constructed for Harold over months of patient conversation. The ring operated with sustained patience. The gap between the first contact in August 2024 and the first financial transfer in March 2025 was 7 months. 7 months of calls, documents, and 1 meeting during which no money moved. They were building a picture and building trust. Federal prosecutors would later describe this in charging documents as a systematic grooming protocol. In elder financial exploitation that sustained patience, nothing feeling wrong because nothing wrong is happening yet, is both the most effective tool available to this type of operation and the hardest thing for any external party to detect in real time. The first transfer, $42,000, moved in March 2025 into the Boise Credit Union account Harold had been directed to open. From there, it routed through 3 intermediary accounts across 2 states before disappearing into a Delaware LLC, registered to a nominee with a fabricated identity. The pattern repeated. Every transfer was triggered within 24 to 48 hours of a specific inbound deposit, a pension payment, a Social Security credit, a quarterly dividend. Over 13 months, $740,000 left the Petrovs' financial life. Their Social Security direct deposits and Harold's pension income had been rerouted to accounts the ring controlled. By April 2026, the Petrovs' accessible financial position had been reduced to less than $9,000. They did not know any of this. The FBI's Salt Lake City field office took formal jurisdiction of the case on April 29, 2026. Supervisory Special Agent Dana Kelleher led the investigation. Her unit handled financial crime-adjacent missing persons cases across the Intermountain region, a category that doesn't fit cleanly into standard federal classifications and tends to move through interagency systems more slowly than either a pure financial fraud or a straightforward abduction. 3 parallel investigative tracks opened simultaneously: financial forensics on the credit union account and its full transfer chain, communications analysis on the Veterans Horizon infrastructure and associated phone numbers, physical surveillance on the Bonners Ferry property and the known contact locations. Financial forensics produced the clearest early progress. The transfer chain from the credit union account passed through 14 accounts across 5 institutions in 3 states before terminating in 2 structures: a Delaware LLC registered to a nominee with a false identity, and a wire transfer routed through a Vancouver, British Columbia financial institution that specialized in high-volume currency exchange with minimal documentation requirements. FinCEN flagged both endpoints as consistent with money laundering architecture. The money was effectively gone, but the transfer timing produced one finding that mattered. The precision of each withdrawal, triggered within hours of a specific inbound deposit, implied either an automated monitoring system or a dedicated human operator watching the accounts. A subpoena to the credit union's technical division produced server logs showing non-standard API queries to the account's notification system, originating from IP addresses in a range consistent with a commercial VPN service based in Eastern Europe. The monitoring was technical, not manual. That implied either criminal specialists with financial sector technical knowledge or purchased access to someone who had that knowledge. I spent time working through the transfer sequence in this case, and one figure kept standing out. The average interval between an inbound deposit and the corresponding outgoing transfer was 11 hours. Not days. Hours. That level of responsiveness to a victim's account activity, maintained consistently over 13 months across multiple account types and institutions, is not the behavior of an unsophisticated operation. It is a financial surveillance capability. Capabilities like that leave institutional fingerprints, but tracing those fingerprints through VPN architecture and foreign relay servers takes weeks, and weeks was not what the investigation had to spare. The communications analysis on Veterans Horizon was substantially less productive. The phone infrastructure, VoIP relay through multiple states, prepaid registration with fabricated identities, was built specifically to resist reverse engineering. Agents identified 12 additional phone numbers associated with the same relay architecture. All of them traced to prepaid or VoIP accounts registered to non-real identities. The Miles City call center address corresponded to a leased residential property that had been cleanly vacated before the Petrovs disappeared. The leasing agent recalled a man who paid 6 months in advance in cash. The physical description, white male, 50 to 60 years, medium build, no distinguishing features, matched nothing in any federal database associated with the known Veterans Horizon contact history. 7 field interviews over 3 weeks produced incremental data, but no location. An abandoned property in Miles City had served as a legitimizing address for at least 4 different shell entities simultaneously over the preceding 12 months. By the time agents identified it as significant, it was empty and professionally cleaned. The Durango put agents in eastern Montana. The missing truck paper trail was a dead end. 3 weeks in, 42 analysts on the financial thread, 6 physical surveillance operations, and the investigation was facing what Kelleher's team later described internally as a functional wall. No location, no physical lead, no informant. On May 22, 2026, a pharmacist in Glendive, Montana, made a non-emergency call to the Dawson County Sheriff's Office. Angela DeWitt had worked at an independent pharmacy in Glendive for 11 years. She managed recurring refill schedules for a customer base spanning Dawson County in adjacent rural areas. Rural pharmacy is relationship work. She knew most of her customers by name, by condition, by the geography of their lives, which roads they drove, which seasons kept them closer to home, which prescriptions were maintenance and which were urgent. Harold Petrov's Coumadin derivative blood thinner, a specific compound with a limited prescribing pattern in this part of Montana, had been transferred to her pharmacy from a Bonners Ferry provider in late March 2026. The transfer documentation stated the Petrovs would be spending an extended period at a vacation property in eastern Montana. She processed it without concern. The prescription had been picked up twice since the transfer, both times by a man she did not recognize. A white half-ton pickup, the driver listed on the intake form as a family member. Nothing unusual in a rural area. What was unusual, there were exactly 14 patients in all of eastern Montana on the same class of Coumadin derivative. DeWitt knew 12 of them personally. The compound was specific enough that its prescribers and its pharmacies formed a small, familiar constellation. A transfer in from out of state was something she paid attention to. The pickup routing didn't add up. The direction from which the vehicle consistently approached didn't match any property she knew as a vacation rental, a seasonal residence, or a location associated with visitors from northern Idaho. She had looked at the address twice and couldn't make it fit the geography she knew. She pulled the intake form from the second pickup, dated May 20th. The driver's signature was a first name and a last initial. The pharmacy's exterior security camera had captured most of the vehicle's rear plate. On May 22nd, she called the Dawson County Sheriff's Office non-emergency line and said she had something she thought they might want to look at. She wasn't sure if it was important. She just couldn't make the route make geographical sense. The partial plate returned to a white half-ton pickup registered to Clearwater Property Advisors, LLC. The deputy who ran it forwarded the entity name to the Montana Division of Criminal Investigation as a routine referral. DCI logged it. A cross-reference check against open federal cases produced a match. Clearwater Property Advisors, LLC, had appeared in the FBI Salt Lake City Financial Forensics on the Petrovs missing persons case. The flag entered Kelleher's queue at 11:47 p.m. on May 23rd, found by an analyst reviewing pending Montana referrals while working late on an unrelated matter. What's most surprising about this discovery isn't that the pharmacist's call produced a breakthrough. It's that the breakthrough almost didn't happen. The entity name match was a single text string in a DCI log that required manual cross-reference against a federal watch list that was itself not fully current. Clearwater had been flagged only days earlier and hadn't propagated through all federal systems. A tired analyst, nearly midnight, a routine scan, found it. If she had left at 6 that evening, the flag sits unread until morning. Those 8 hours matter when two people are 6 feet underground. That's the most operationally significant coincidence in this case. A watch list propagation lag of less than 72 hours, an analyst who stayed late, and a data string that would otherwise have been reviewed at 9 a.m. by a different team with a different understanding of the Petrovs case. How this works is worth understanding. The ring built monitoring capability into the victim's banking infrastructure. It built false identity infrastructure into its communications. It built offshore routing into its financial architecture. Each layer was designed to absorb investigative pressure and return nothing actionable. The pharmacist's call worked not because it defeated any of those layers, but because it bypassed all of them. Angela DeWitt was looking at geography, not at shell companies. She noticed that a route was wrong. No layer of the ring's operational design had anticipated that. If you follow federal cases with any regularity, and you understand what it means when an operation of this design is brought down not by its investigative pressure points, but by a geographic anomaly a pharmacist noticed. then you know this story is larger than one rescue. Before we go into what was found on that laptop, hit like so more of this reporting reaches people who follow these cases closely. Cell tower data from the pickup vehicle's route on May 9th and May 20th triangulated to an area south of Glendive along a county access road. Topographical analysis identified several derelict agricultural properties in that corridor. The cattle weighing station at the end of a secondary track, listed as abandoned on county records, owned through a trust administered by a Billings law firm that, investigators would later determine, was itself connected to the shell company network, had a concrete foundation anomaly visible in archived radar data once analysts knew to look for it. Ground surveillance began on May 24th. 3 passive observation vehicles, no approach. The white half-ton made 2 daily runs to the corrugated iron sheet, morning and late afternoon. The drivers lifted the sheet, lowered items through the opening, and replaced it. No one came out. No one approached the main structure. Kelleher's warrant application went to Magistrate Judge Carolyn Steves on May 26th. The application cited the surveillance documentation, the LLC financial connection to the Petrovs investigation, the Pharmacist statement and prescription history, and the cell tower triangulation data. Judge Steves signed the warrant in under 14 hours. Ground-penetrating radar deployed on May 28th confirmed the chamber. 9 meters by 4 meters, reinforced concrete, steel fixtures consistent with enclosures. The ventilation routing through buried PVC conduit was confirmed and functional. The chamber had been engineered for extended occupancy. 2 heat signatures, both alive. The call to the FBI director's office went at 9:14 p.m. on May 29th. Authorization to proceed came at 9:41. The 6 days between the site's identification and the authorization were not wasted. Legal warrant process, tactical planning, HRT insertion logistics, medical unit staging, every day was accounted for. But the 2 heat signatures were 6 feet underground throughout all of them, and everyone in the command structure was aware of that fact. The decision to go in on the night of May 29th rather than extending surveillance to gather intelligence on the ring's oversight tier was Kelleher's call, and it was not automatic. The argument for extended surveillance was legitimate. The ring was known to have at least 2 individuals at the director level, people who managed operations from outside Montana and whose identities were not yet established. Every additional day of controlled surveillance potentially produced intercept data on those individuals. The argument against was more urgent. The next pension deposit was scheduled for early June. After it cleared, the financial rationale for keeping the Petrovs alive would change. The window was closing. She made the call to go in on May 29th night, breach at pre-dawn on May 30th. By the time the FBI cyber forensics team accessed the encrypted partition on the laptop recovered from the pickup truck cab, what they found made clear that the decision to move immediately had been correct. The partition contained a document labeled in the ring's internal shorthand as AL Asset List, 23 entries. Each entry included a name, a state of residence, a financial profile summary, an approximate asset valuation, and a status indicator. The status designations were active grooming, pre-acquisition, and pending review. 3 entries were marked pre-acquisition, meaning the grooming phase was complete. The decision to move to physical custody had been made internally. The operational timeline for removal was being finalized. 3 people, somewhere in the United States. In the window before the arrest became public, federal agents notified relevant families and law enforcement contacts within 72 hours. Financial holds were placed on accounts associated with 14 of the 23 entries. Most of those individuals had no awareness that anything had been done to their financial profiles. 7 of the 23 entries corresponded to individuals who had already been reported missing in the prior 14 months across 6 states. 7 people. 6 separate missing persons cases, each investigated in isolation by separate agencies, with no cross-state connection identified. Here's the take that will generate pushback, and I'll say it directly. The 7 active missing persons cases that had no connecting thread, no cross-state pattern identification, No coordinated federal response. That is not primarily a failure of any individual investigator, any local department, or any field office. It's a structural failure. Federal systems don't cross-reference missing persons cases across state lines in real time. The FBI, FinCEN, state missing persons registries, and local law enforcement systems do not have a mechanism that connects cases in real time across state lines. An elderly man missing in Idaho and an elderly man missing in Tennessee look, in their respective case files, like two unrelated local tragedies. There is no automated system that says elderly, asset-rich, veteran-adjacent, missing with financial irregularities, no crime scene, and connects 6 versions of that pattern into one investigation. That infrastructure gap has been documented in federal oversight reports 3 times in the last decade. We will say what most won't. The 7 families who waited longer than they should have, and the 7 people who may still be waiting, are not the failure of the people working those cases. They are the failure of people who have known this gap exists and have left it open. What do you think? Did the departure of one of the ring's oversight tier individuals from Denver International on May 26th, 4 days before the breach, happen because someone inside the warrant process tipped them off? Or was it a pre-planned operational protocol that coincidentally aligned with the warrant filing? Leave a comment. People who follow federal procedure closely are exactly who I want to hear from on this. The arrests on May 30th had taken 7 people off the board. 2 remained unaccounted for. 1 had departed Denver International on May 26th on a flight to Cancun, 4 days before the breach, the same date the warrant application was filed. Whether that timing reflected a leak inside the process or a pre-planned operational safeguard is the subject of an active internal review as of late June 2026. The second unidentified individual had not traveled internationally, but had not been located within the United States by the time of this reporting. At 2 a.m. on May 30th, a convoy of 7 vehicles departed from a staging area at an agricultural property the FBI had leased under a third-party entity beginning May 27th. 2 HRT tactical vehicles, a command vehicle, a communications and medical response unit, a Montana State Police vehicle, a U.S. Marshals Perimeter unit, 31 personnel total. The routes had been pre-driven. Access road timing had been calculated against traffic camera coverage gaps. The convoy ran with minimum lighting after the county highway junction. Outer perimeter set at 2:58 a.m. The access road controlled at both ends. The surveillance drone airborne from Glendive, 9 kilometers out, feeding thermal imaging to the command vehicle. 3 a.m. thermal imaging confirmed 2 signatures in the underground chamber. Stationary. Alive. No additional signatures. The HRT entry team had identified 2 primary tactical risks in planning. First, the ventilation conduit running through buried PVC created an overpressure risk during a shape charge breach. If the charge was too large, the concussive wave traveling down the ventilation pathway could cause injury to the chamber's occupants. The charge was calibrated specifically for the hatch cover's construction and designed to direct blast energy upward. That calibration required knowing the exact hatch specifications, derived from ground-penetrating radar, and confirmed through soil core samples taken from the access track on May 29th morning, a step that added roughly 6 hours to the final preparation timeline, but that the HRT commander determined was non-negotiable. Second, the possibility of armed individuals inside the chamber in addition to the 2 known signatures. Ground-penetrating radar cannot distinguish a 2-person configuration from a 3-person configuration if the additional individual is positioned against a radar-opaque fixture. The tactical plan assigned the second descent element specifically to interior perimeter control, with instructions to treat any unconfirmed presence as armed until confirmed otherwise. At 4:04 a.m., the entry team moved to the surface hatch position. Fixed line ropes staged. Medical personnel 20 meters back with portable equipment. The command vehicle confirmed the thermal imaging was unchanged. 2 signatures, same positions as 1 hour earlier. The shape charge detonated at 4:14 and 16 seconds. The lead element was on ropes and descending 9 seconds after the blast. Tactical lights mounted on their gear illuminated the chamber in sequence. The two steel cage enclosures were exactly where the radar surveys had placed them, left and right along the long axis, each roughly the dimensions of a large walk-in storage unit. Both were occupied. Both occupants were awake. Whether from the sound of the blast or from their own internal rhythms in the darkness, the agents couldn't determine. Harold Petrov's wrist restraints, a cable tie arrangement attached to a fixed anchor point inside the left enclosure, were cut within 40 seconds of first contact. Mariana's restraints were addressed in the 15 seconds following. Medical personnel descended on ropes within 3 minutes of the entry team's initial contact. Initial assessment: both individuals stable, significantly dehydrated, physically weakened from extended confinement with restricted movement, requiring assisted extraction. Harold's cardiovascular monitoring was the immediate priority. His blood thinner prescription, a compound requiring consistent daily administration or risk of serious cardiovascular event, had been delivered to the chamber by the ring's daily logistics operation and had been administered underground. He had been receiving his medication while held. The prescription that Angela DeWitt had flagged because the pickup route made no geographical sense was the prescription that had kept his heart from failing in the dark. Put yourself in the position of the HRT medic documenting that intake for a moment, noting that the medication keeping this man alive had been delivered to him underground, in a steel cage, by the same people who put him there, because those people needed his pension to keep clearing. That bureaucratic detail is the moral architecture of this operation in a single line. The extraction process, from first medical contact to both individuals at the surface, took 11 minutes and 40 seconds. At 4:31 a.m., Kelleher received confirmation from the entry team lead. 2 individuals extracted, alive, status stable, simultaneous operations were executing across the state. The Miles City secondary address raided by an arrest team at 4:19 a.m., 5 minutes before the surface hatch blew, produced 2 individuals taken without incident. The Billings hotel arrest at 4:47 a.m. found 1 individual in a ground floor room on his cell phone when agents knocked. He disconnected the call before they entered. The number he had dialed was a foreign VoIP relay that went dead within seconds of the call ending. FBI cyber forensics traced the relay chain over the following 9 days to a terminal point outside the United States. The identity of the person receiving that call remained, as of late June 2026, unknown. 7 individuals arrested, 3 states, a 33-minute operational window. Then the laptop was opened. One detail in this case has stayed with me since going through the case materials. When the lead descent operator reached Harold Petrov's cage and made first verbal contact, Harold's initial response after confirming the agents were FBI was a 2-part statement. The first part, Patricia called the bank, was the clearest form of situational summary a person can produce after 41 days underground. The second part, which the operator passed up in the initial extraction report, was a question: how long did she know? He was asking how long his daughter had been aware that something was wrong. The operator told him she had been looking for him for 41 days. Harold Petrov said nothing further on the subject until his formal interview with Kelleher 12 days later. What he said in that interview has not been publicly released. By June 3, 2026, federal prosecutors in the District of Montana had filed charges against all 7 individuals in custody. The charges: kidnapping, interstate transportation of kidnapping victims, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit all of the above. Maximum exposure across the primary defendants ranged from 20 to 40 years. Bail was denied for 5 of the 7 on flight risk grounds. 2 received conditional release under electronic monitoring. The financial picture was not encouraging. Total losses attributed to the Bear Hollow network, across the Petrovs and all victims identified through the asset list and financial forensics, reached approximately $4.2 million by Finson's accounting. Of that, approximately $600,000 was frozen in accounts, subject to legal hold through international mutual legal assistance procedures. The remaining $3.6 million had moved through the offshore routing architecture and was, as of late June, unrecovered. That figure represents the ordinary arithmetic of offshore routed elder fraud, when the prosecution timeline lags money movement by more than a year. Federal asset recovery in offshore routed cases averages below 20% within the first year of charges. The Petrovs' $740,000, their retirement, built across a working lifetime, will very likely not come back to them in anything near its entirety. That is not dramatic commentary. That is the financial mechanics of this category of crime in 2026. The Billings law firm that administered the property trust holding the weighing station was placed under federal scrutiny. The firm's partners cooperated voluntarily. Initial review indicated that the trust had been established through a process meeting all Montana registration requirements, and that the firm had been used as a registered agent without the partners' knowledge of the trust's actual purpose. Whether that characterization holds through the full federal investigation remains an open question. Will the two oversight tier individuals be found? Comment yes or no. This community's read on how these investigations end is worth tracking. Operation Bear Hollow was publicly named in an FBI press release dated June 3rd. A financial advisory issued to institutions on June 4th identified 12 specific signature patterns associated with reverse acquisition fraud targeting elderly Americans with verified asset profiles, recommending enhanced monitoring on account transfers matching those patterns. The advisory did not disclose how many currently active accounts match the identified signature set. That number was not released. The 41 unresolved missing persons cases identified for Bear Hollow review were selected using a profiling template from the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit, built on the network's known victim selection criteria: age 65 or older, asset-rich, veteran-adjacent, rural or semi-rural residents, limited daily visibility to extended family. 9 of the 41 previously closed cases, closed as voluntary departures or natural causes, are being re-examined to determine whether those closures were appropriate. The review is expected to take 8 to 12 months. It is ongoing. 7 people on the original 23-name asset list remain unidentified or unlocated. None of the 7 whose names corresponded to existing missing persons cases have been found as of the time of this reporting. Subscribe if you want to follow where this goes, because this case is not finished. And when the 41 case review produces its first findings, this channel will be there. Harold Petrov was discharged from the University of Utah Medical Center on June 7, 2026. Mariana was discharged 2 days later. They returned to Bonner's Ferry, to the house Harold helped to build, to the wood shop with the cabinet still half-hinged, to the kitchen garden Mariana keeps along the south-facing wall. Their daughters now call twice a week. The kitchen phone is plugged back into the wall jack. 7 members of the ring are in federal custody. 2 remain at large. $3.6 million is offshore and untouched. 9 of the 23 people on the asset list have not been found. 7 missing persons cases are active and cross-referenced under Bear Hollow's expanded scope. The ring built this operation by exploiting 3 things that still exist: legally purchased data on veteran and elderly demographics, a professional presentation sustained over months, and the ordinary gap between how criminal operations coordinate across state lines and how the systems built to investigate them share information across jurisdictions. All 3 of those conditions remain unchanged as of late June 2026. The ring is dismantled. The method is documented. The demand that made the method profitable was not in that bunker when the HRT team went down. The 41 cases are open, and the 7 are still missing.